She sat on the worn wooden bench in the corner of the music room, her fingers hovering just above the keys of the old piano. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, falling in warm patches across the floor, but it seemed to avoid her. The room was mostly empty, except for the echo of distant voices in the hallway, laughter, and footsteps that didn't belong to her. She liked it that way, liked the quiet, because it gave her the freedom to play without anyone watching. She had been coming to this piano for years, practicing every day, but it often felt like her talent was invisible, like the notes she poured out never truly reached anyone. Her hands moved carefully, testing the chords she had been struggling with all morning. Each note felt heavy at first, stiff, as if the piano was judging her. Then gradually, the melody began to flow, delicate and soft, carrying a piece of her heart with every rise and fall. She closed her eyes and let herself be swallowed by the music, the outside world disappearing entirely. Here, in this small corner, she was not the quiet, overlooked girl. Here, she was alive, powerful and free. Despite her love for music, recognition had always been just out of reach. In school, the spotlight seemed to find everyone else. Teachers would praise the more outgoing students, the ones who laughed loudly, the ones who were confident in every performance, even if their fingers stumbled over the keys. She often received polite claps and nods, but never that look of genuine awe that made someone feel seen. Her heart ached when she watched others take the stage with ease, their names called first, their talents celebrated, while she waited, uncertain if her turn would ever come. The recital was approaching, and she could feel a mixture of excitement and dread building inside her. It was supposed to be a night for showcasing the best talent in the school, and while she had worked tirelessly for this moment, she feared it might slip away unnoticed. Every day after classes, she lingered in the music room, practicing scales, perfecting arpeggios, and trying to feel the music as deeply as she could. The piano keys became her friends, her confidants, and sometimes the only ones who seemed to understand her. She played not for the applause but for the music itself, for the way it made her feel alive. Her parents noticed her dedication but worried she spent too much time alone. They had suggested joining group performances or competitions, places where more people would notice her. But she hesitated, afraid that in a crowded room of talent, she would simply vanish. There was comfort in solitude, in playing without expectations, yet she secretly longed for someone to hear her fully, to see her not just as a student who practiced quietly in the corner, but as a musician with something important to say. As the day of the recital approached, nerves began to creep in. She imagined walking onto the stage, sitting at the grand piano, and playing in front of dozens of people. Her stomach twisted with anxiety. What if she made a mistake? What if her fingers froze? What if the audience didn't care? She had replayed these fears countless times in her head, each scenario leaving her feeling smaller, less significant. Yet, beneath the worry, there was a small spark of determination. She refused to let fear dictate her love for music. One afternoon, while she practiced a particularly difficult piece, the music teacher stopped by the room unexpectedly. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, and listened silently. She didn't notice him at first, so absorbed was she in the rising and falling melody. When she finally looked up, he nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "You have a good ear," he said quietly, "but you need to play with more confidence. People notice that." She swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. It wasn't the first time someone had given her advice like that, and she often felt it was easier said than done. Confidence didn't come from notes on a page or hours of practice. It was something that had to grow from inside, from a belief in herself that she wasn't sure she had. Yet his words lingered in her mind long after he left, like seeds waiting for sunlight. That evening, she stayed in the music room long after everyone else had gone home. The building was quiet except for the hum of the radiator and the soft thump of her heart. She played slowly at first, letting her fingers remember every nuance, every pause, every swell of sound. Then she began to play with more emotion, more courage. The music was no longer just notes on a page. It was a story, a confession, a shout into the world that she existed and that she mattered. For a few precious moments, she forgot her fears, forgot the audience, and allowed herself to feel proud of what she could create. Even as she left the music room and walked down the empty hallway, the echo of her music followed her, a quiet reminder of her potential. She knew the recital was a test, not just of skill but of courage. She would have to step into the light and trust that her years of practice, her countless hours spent in solitude, had prepared her for this. It was scary, yes, but also exhilarating. She felt a tiny pulse of excitement, the kind that made the hair on her arms stand up, telling her that something important was about to happen. In the days leading up to the recital, she practiced with renewed focus. She imagined the room, the audience, and the moment when she would sit at the piano, feeling the smooth keys beneath her fingertips. She visualized playing each piece perfectly, not for praise but for the expression of every emotion she had tucked away for years. She knew that when she finally performed, it wouldn't be just a demonstration of skill. It would be the culmination of her perseverance, her dedication, and her love for music. Her friends noticed a change too. She seemed calmer, more certain of herself, though she didn't boast or seek attention. She spoke less about her fears and more about the music itself. Her teachers began to watch her with quiet curiosity, wondering if this time, the quiet girl in the corner would finally step into the recognition she had long deserved. She felt the pressure, yes, but she also felt something else, hope. Hope that all the hours of solitude, all the overlooked practices, all the silent moments spent with the piano, might finally come to life in a way that others could witness. On the night before the recital, she barely slept. Her mind was alive with anticipation, replaying pieces, imagining the stage, and feeling the thrill of possibility. She knew the journey was far from over, that stepping onto the stage would bring its own challenges. But for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine success. Not fame, not applause, but the simple joy of knowing that she had shared her music fully, without holding back, without shrinking to fit into the background. As she lay in bed, she thought of the piano waiting for her, its keys like friends calling her name. She felt a quiet determination settle inside her, a feeling that no matter what happened tomorrow, she would play with everything she had. The world might have overlooked her for years, but the music had never ignored her. And maybe, just maybe, the world was about to listen. The morning of the recital arrived, bright and crisp. She dressed carefully, choosing something comfortable yet presentable, and carried herself with a quiet confidence she had never felt before. The journey to the music hall was filled with nervous energy, but also with a sense of purpose. She reminded herself that this was her moment, not for anyone else, but for herself. The piano had been her companion through so many lonely days, her solace and her joy. Tonight, she would honor that relationship and finally allow her music to speak for her. As she entered the hall, the hum of conversations and footsteps washed over her. The stage looked larger than she had imagined, the audience seats stretching endlessly before her. She could feel her heart pounding, but it was different from the anxious pounding of years past. This was anticipation, not fear. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar strength in her fingers, the rhythm in her mind, and the melody in her heart. She had practiced for this moment, yes, but she had also grown in ways that no one had seen. Tonight, she would let the world see her through the music itself. With a final glance at the audience, she stepped onto the stage and sat at the grand piano. The bright lights were warm, almost like the sun in the music room where she had spent so many hours alone. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, recalling every practice, every challenge, every silent tear shed in the quiet corners of the school. And then, she pressed the first key, and the music began to flow, soft and tentative at first, then bold and beautiful, carrying the essence of everything she had felt, everything she had endured, and everything she had dreamed. In that first part of her story, she was no longer overlooked. She was seen, if not yet by the audience, then at least by herself in the purest way possible. The journey had just begun, but she had already taken the most important step. She had chosen to let her music speak, and in doing so, She had begun to step out of the shadows and into the light. The next morning, she woke up feeling a strange mix of excitement and fear. The recital was only hours away, and she could feel her stomach twisting into knots. She remembered the many days and nights she had spent practicing alone, and she wondered if all that effort would finally mean something. Would people notice her this time, or would she still be overlooked, a quiet figure in the background? She pushed the thought away, telling herself to focus on the music, on the sound of the keys beneath her fingers, and on the story she wanted to tell through her playing. After breakfast, she returned to the piano one last time before the recital. The room smelled faintly of old wood and polish, familiar and comforting. Her hands moved over the keys automatically at first, then with more purpose, as she reminded herself of every detail in the pieces she would perform. Each note was a memory of long hours of practice, each chord a reflection of her dedication. She played slowly at first, then faster, letting the music carry her as it always had. There was a rhythm to her movements that felt natural, a flow that made the piano come alive beneath her touch. Even as she practiced, doubts lingered in the corners of her mind. She thought of the other performers, confident and charismatic, whose performances had always drawn attention. She imagined the audience clapping politely for her, then turning their eyes away, as if she had been nothing more than a quiet moment in their day. The fear was heavy, but she refused to let it stop her. She had faced this feeling before, every time she sat at the piano alone, and she had always pushed through it. Today would be no different. Her parents arrived to take her to the recital, their presence a steady support. They said little, sensing her need for quiet reflection, but their eyes held pride and encouragement. She knew they believed in her, even if the world had not yet noticed her talent. The ride to the music hall was filled with silence, each of them lost in their thoughts. She stared out the window, watching the city pass by, and let her mind wander to the music she would play. She imagined the first notes filling the hall, the way the audience might lean in, the thrill of sharing her heart through sound. At the music hall, the lobby was bustling with performers and parents. The air smelled faintly of polish and nervous energy, a mixture that made her heart race. She clutched her music folder tightly, feeling the paper edges press into her palms. Around her, people chatted easily, laughing, showing off their dresses or instruments. She felt small in comparison, her quiet demeanor making her almost invisible in the crowd. For a moment she questioned why she had even come. Maybe it was easier to remain unnoticed, to stay in the safety of solitude. But then she remembered the piano, the countless hours of practice, and the dream she had carried quietly in her heart. She could not turn back now. Backstage, the performers were warming up, their fingers running over strings and keys, their voices echoing in the hall. She found a quiet corner and took a deep breath, feeling the familiar tension in her chest. Her heart pounded like a drum, a warning and a rhythm all at once. She closed her eyes and pictured the piano waiting for her, its keys like friends ready to welcome her. Slowly, she began to play a few notes to calm herself, letting the familiar patterns remind her of everything she had learned. The music wrapped around her, steadying her nerves and giving her courage. Time passed quickly, and soon it was her turn to go on. A stagehand called her name, and she stood, shaking slightly but determined. She walked toward the stage, each step feeling heavier than the last, yet necessary. The bright lights made the hall seem larger, the rows of seats stretching endlessly, filled with expectant faces. For a moment, she froze, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. Then she reminded herself that this was not about anyone else. It was about the music, about sharing what she had cultivated in silence for so long. As she sat down at the grand piano, the polished surface reflecting the lights above, she felt the weight of the audience's gaze. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling their cool touch, and took a deep breath. The first note sounded soft and careful, as if testing the waters. The audience shifted in their seats, some whispering, some holding their breath. She closed her eyes and let the music guide her, each note building confidence, each chord telling a story. The music began to flow more freely, her fingers moving with a precision and emotion that made the piano sing. In the audience, people leaned forward, drawn by the unexpected depth and beauty of the performance. They noticed the intensity in her playing, the way the music seemed to reach beyond the notes, speaking directly to the heart. Whispers of admiration began to circulate, and she could feel the energy of the room shifting. The quiet girl in the corner was no longer invisible. She was commanding attention, not through words, but through the power of her music. Halfway through the performance, a small smile crept onto her face. She had found her rhythm, her connection with the piano, and with the audience. Her earlier fears melted away, replaced by a focus and joy that had been years in the making. She played each piece with a mixture of precision and feeling, the notes rising and falling like waves, carrying the emotions she had kept hidden for so long. Each chord seemed to echo through the hall, resonating with everyone present, leaving no room for doubt or indifference. The final piece was the most challenging, both technically and emotionally. She had practiced it countless times, but performing it live added a new dimension. She felt every tension, every hesitation, every breath as she moved through the music. Yet, she also felt a newfound strength, a sense that she could conquer this moment, that she could make the piano speak for her in a way that words never could. Her hands flew over the keys, each note perfectly timed, each chord filled with feeling. The audience was captivated, silent in awe, drawn into the story she told through sound. When the last note faded, there was a pause, a quiet that seemed to stretch for an eternity. Then the applause began, tentative at first, then growing louder, filling the hall with a sound that made her chest ache with emotion. She opened her eyes and saw people smiling, some with tears in their eyes, some clapping enthusiastically. For the first time, she realized that her music had touched others, that the countless hours of solitude and practice had not been in vain. She had stepped out of the shadows, and the world had finally seen her. Backstage, other performers congratulated her, some in genuine admiration, others curious about the girl who had amazed everyone with her unexpected talent. Her parents hugged her tightly, pride shining in their eyes. She felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond applause. It was the knowledge that she had dared to share herself fully, to let the music speak, and that it had reached others in a meaningful way. The fears that had haunted her for years seemed distant, replaced by a quiet confidence that this was only the beginning. That night, after the recital, she returned home exhausted but happy. She thought about the performance, replaying each note in her mind, savoring the moment when she had felt truly alive. The recognition from the audience was gratifying. Yes, but more importantly, she had proven to herself that she could face her fears and let her talent shine. She realized that being overlooked in the past had not diminished her ability. It had only prepared her for this moment of revelation. In the following days, she noticed small changes in how people treated her. Teachers praised her. Classmates approached her with newfound respect, and even strangers who had attended the recital commented on her remarkable performance. Yet, she remained humble, knowing that the real achievement was personal. The growth, courage, and love for music that had carried her through the most difficult moments. She continued to practice, but now with a sense of joy and anticipation, rather than fear or doubt. The piano remained her closest companion, but the world had finally begun to notice its voice through her hands. Through this experience, she learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. Recognition and applause were wonderful, but they were not the ultimate goal. The true reward was in perseverance, in the courage to face fears, and in the willingness to share something deeply personal with the world. She realized that her music was not just about notes on a page but about expression, connection, and the power to move hearts. And in that understanding, she found a strength that no one could ever overlook again. After the recital, life slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but she felt a subtle shift inside her. The experience had changed something fundamental. She no longer doubted herself as much, though the quiet part of her personality remained. People's eyes had been on her, but she realized that their attention was secondary to her own sense of accomplishment. The music had spoken, and for the first time, she truly believed in her own voice. School felt different now. Students who had rarely noticed her before smiled and asked about her performance. Teachers offered words of encouragement and subtle guidance. The recognition was new and slightly uncomfortable, yet she welcomed it cautiously. She did not seek praise, but it felt good to know that people were listening. Still, she focused more on her growth than on external approval, understanding that the journey was about mastering herself, her instrument, and the emotions she wanted to convey. In the following weeks, she returned to the music room to practice with renewed focus. She wanted to expand her repertoire, to challenge herself with pieces that tested both her skill and her ability to convey feeling. Each day, she arrived early, sat quietly at the piano, and let her fingers move naturally. The keys felt alive under her touch, and she noticed nuances in sound she had never paid attention to before. Her confidence grew quietly, steadily, as she explored the depths of the music she loved. Despite the success of the recital, doubts still crept in occasionally. There were moments when she compared herself to other performers, wondering if they were more talented, more deserving of recognition. But now she met these doubts with a different attitude. She reminded herself that music was not a competition, and that her value was not determined by applause or popularity. Each note she played was a reflection of her dedication and passion. Slowly, she learned to silence the inner critic, replacing fear with determination. One day, the music teacher approached her with a suggestion. A regional competition was coming up, and he believed she had a real chance to excel. She hesitated at first, thinking about the pressure and the unfamiliar audience. The idea of performing again, especially in a more formal setting, brought a twinge of nervousness. Yet, she also felt a flicker of excitement. This was an opportunity to challenge herself, to see how far her abilities could take her. After a few moments of thought, she agreed, deciding to embrace the experience fully. Preparation for the competition became her new focus. She chose pieces that demanded technical skill and emotional depth, pieces that would allow her personality to shine through every note. She practiced diligently, sometimes late into the evening, making careful adjustments to phrasing, tempo, and expression. Every mistake became a lesson, every success a building block of confidence. She discovered that the act of preparing itself was just as important as the performance, a journey of self-discovery and mastery. Her family noticed the change in her. She seemed more confident, yet more reflective, her dedication deepening without arrogance. They encouraged her quietly, understanding that this was a personal journey for her. They could not perform the pieces, could not feel the music as she did, but they respected the effort, and that respect was enough. She felt supported, not pressured, and that balance allowed her to practice with joy instead of anxiety. The night before the competition, she barely slept. Her mind was alive with anticipation, planning every step, recalling each note, imagining the feel of the grand piano she would play. She reminded herself to breathe, to trust in her preparation, and to let the music come naturally. The familiar mix of excitement and nervousness pulsed through her, but this time it was tempered with quiet confidence. She knew she had done everything she could to prepare, and now it was time to let the performance speak for itself. The competition hall was imposing, filled with rows of seats and bright lights. Performers from various schools and backgrounds prepared quietly, some pacing nervously, others tuning instruments or running through scales. She found a quiet corner, took a deep breath, and began to warm up. Her fingers danced over the keys, feeling the piano respond beneath her touch. The sound was different here, richer and more resonant than her usual practice piano. She felt a thrill at the new challenge, ready to adapt and make the music her own. When it was her turn, she walked onto the stage slowly, letting her eyes adjust to the bright lights. The audience was larger than she had expected, faces unfamiliar and distant. Her heart beat rapidly, but she drew on the lessons of her past recital, centering herself through the music. She sat at the grand piano, feeling the smooth keys under her fingers, and let the first note ring out. The sound filled the hall, clear and confident, carrying with it her years of dedication and quiet perseverance. As she continued, her initial nerves transformed into focus. She played with precision, but also with a depth of emotion that captivated the audience. Every phrase, every chord told a story, revealing her unique voice as a musician. People leaned forward, listening intently, drawn into the journey she created through the piano. She was no longer just a performer. She was a storyteller, conveying feelings without words, communicating with each listener in a personal way. Midway through her performance, she felt a moment of pure clarity. The music flowed effortlessly, her fingers moving instinctively, her emotions poured into every note. She felt a connection with the audience, even though they were strangers, a shared understanding that transcended words. It was exhilarating, humbling, and deeply satisfying. She realized that the power of music lay not only in technical skill, but in its ability to touch hearts, to create moments of shared emotion and understanding. The final notes of her performance resonated through the hall, leaving a lingering silence before applause erupted. She held her hands still for a moment, allowing the sound to settle, then rose to a standing ovation. Faces in the audience reflected admiration, awe, and genuine appreciation. Her heart swelled, not from vanity, but from the knowledge that she had communicated something real and profound through her music. She had conquered her fears, embraced her abilities, and shared her soul with the world. Backstage, other performers congratulated her warmly. Some expressed genuine admiration, others curiosity, and a few offered questions about her technique. She responded politely, feeling both pride and humility. Her parents embraced her tightly, and she could feel the weight of years of practice, doubt, and solitude lifting from her shoulders. The competition was not just about winning. It was about discovery, growth, and the courage to be seen. And in that moment, she had succeeded on all fronts. The judges' results came later, and while she did not take first place, she received special recognition for the emotion and artistry in her performance. It was a reminder that success was not only measured in ranks or trophies, but in the impact her music had on others and the growth she experienced herself. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be new challenges and opportunities to push herself further, but the confidence she had gained was invaluable. In the days following the competition, she returned to her practice with a new perspective. The piano was no longer just a solitary refuge. It was a bridge to others, a way to share her inner world and connect with people she had never met. She experimented with new pieces, explored different genres, and pushed herself beyond her comfort zone. The joy of discovery became her driving force, and the recognition she had received was a reminder that perseverance and authenticity could open doors previously thought closed. She also began to help younger students, quietly offering guidance and encouragement, sharing the lessons she had learned without seeking attention. She understood the importance of support, of seeing potential in others and nurturing it. It was a small way to give back, to honor the teachers and mentors who had quietly believed in her, and to pass on the gift of confidence and courage through music. Through this period, she grew not just as a pianist but as a person. The challenges she faced, the doubts she confronted, and the risks she took taught her resilience, patience, and self-belief. She discovered that true strength lay not in being noticed or praised, but in embracing who she was and expressing it fully. Music was her language, her way of telling the world that she existed, that she had something meaningful to offer. Her journey continued, each day bringing new lessons, new music, and new opportunities. Yet, she never forgot the quiet girl who had sat alone in the music room, overlooked and uncertain. That girl had shaped her, had given her the determination to practice endlessly, to face her fears, and to find her voice. And now, as she continued to play, perform, and grow, she carried that part of herself always, a reminder of where she had come from and the limitless possibilities ahead. The next recital came sooner than she expected. By now, she had grown comfortable with performing, but each new stage brought its own set of challenges. The hall was larger than the previous ones, the lights brighter, and the audience more diverse. She could feel the energy of the room as soon as she walked in, a mixture of anticipation, curiosity, and polite chatter. For a moment, she felt the familiar nerves, but she reminded herself that this was another opportunity to share her music, another chance to let her voice be heard. Backstage, performers moved around with varying degrees of confidence. Some spoke loudly, showing off their instruments or techniques, while others practiced silently, lost in their own worlds. She found a quiet corner and began her warm-up, letting her fingers trace familiar patterns across the keys. The grand piano before her was immaculate, its polished surface reflecting the lights above, and she felt a thrill of excitement. The instrument responded instantly to her touch, resonating with a depth she had come to appreciate. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that this piano and her hands would speak the story she wanted to tell. As she waited for her turn, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Years of being overlooked, countless hours of solitary practice, and a growing sense of self-belief had all led to this moment. She remembered the first time she had played in the empty music room, the anxiety and fear she had carried with her, and the quiet determination that had pushed her forward. Each recital, each challenge had strengthened her resolve. She understood now that success was not measured by applause alone, but by the courage to share oneself fully. When her name was called, she stood, her heart beating steadily, and walked toward the stage. The audience was larger than she had anticipated, faces unfamiliar but attentive. The bright lights made the hall appear vast, yet she did not falter. She took a deep breath, placed her hands on the keys, and let the first notes ring out. The music began softly, tentative yet confident, flowing naturally from her mind and heart to the piano and into the room. Each note carried emotion, each chord told a story, and the audience was drawn in by the authenticity of her performance. Midway through, she felt a moment of complete immersion. The hall seemed to disappear, leaving only her and the piano. Her fingers moved instinctively, guided by years of practice, intuition, and emotion. She played with a fluidity and precision that made the music seem effortless. Yet every note was deliberate, every chord intentional. The audience sat in rapt attention, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes, fully absorbed in the experience. The quiet girl who had once been overlooked had become a storyteller through music, captivating those around her without a single word spoken. The piece built to a crescendo, each note more powerful and expressive than the last. She felt the energy in the room responding to her, the collective focus of the audience fueling her confidence. Her emotions poured into every movement, every pause, and every delicate touch of the keys. The music was no longer just a performance. It was a conversation, an unspoken connection between her and everyone present. She could feel their appreciation, their surprise, and their admiration, but she did not play for them. She played for herself, for the joy of creation, and for the fulfillment of expressing what words could never convey. As she reached the final notes, a silence fell over the hall. It was a silence of awe, of recognition, of people fully experiencing the depth of her performance. Then the applause erupted, filling the room with warmth and excitement. She rose from the piano, bowing gracefully, feeling a mix of pride and humility. Faces in the audience reflected a range of emotions: smiles, astonishment, and even tears. She had managed to transcend the ordinary, to touch hearts with her music in a way that left a lasting impression. The quiet, overlooked girl had astonished the entire room, just as the title of the recital program had hinted. Backstage, other performers and teachers approached her with praise and curiosity. They asked about her technique, the emotion behind her playing, and how she had managed to captivate such a large audience. She responded with calm humility, sharing her love for music and her dedication to practice. Her parents hugged her, their pride shining clearly in their eyes, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was more than recognition. It was validation of years of effort, perseverance, and belief in herself. After the recital, she reflected on how far she had come. She had once been invisible, practicing in corners and doubting her abilities. But now she had stepped into the spotlight and shown the world her true potential. The journey had not been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but she knew that she had the strength and skill to face them. She had learned that being overlooked did not define her, and that recognition, while gratifying, was secondary to the joy of sharing her passion. In the days that followed, she continued to practice, not for accolades or competitions, but for the love of music itself. She explored new pieces, experimented with different styles, and allowed her creativity to flourish. The piano remained her constant companion, a source of comfort, challenge, and expression. She also began mentoring younger students, quietly encouraging them and sharing her experiences. She understood the power of support and encouragement, knowing how much it had meant to her when someone had recognized her potential. Her confidence continued to grow, both as a musician and as a person. She was no longer afraid to take risks, to perform in front of others, or to express herself fully. Each performance became an opportunity to explore new depths of emotion and technique, to communicate with audiences in meaningful ways. She learned that success was not about being the best, but about being true to herself and letting her music reflect her unique voice. Through this period, she also learned the value of patience and persistence. Talent alone was not enough. Dedication, resilience, and a willingness to face fears were equally important. She remembered the long hours in the music room, the moments of doubt and frustration, and the quiet determination that had carried her through. Those experiences had shaped her, giving her the tools and mindset to succeed. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she now faced them with confidence, knowing that she had already overcome significant obstacles. Her journey was not just about personal growth. It was also about connection. Music had the power to bring people together, to create shared experiences and emotions that transcended words. She felt honored to be able to share that gift, and she approached each performance with respect and intention. She understood that her music could inspire, comfort, and move others, and that responsibility made her even more committed to her craft. As time passed, she continued to receive invitations to perform, each one a chance to further explore her abilities and share her passion. She remained humble, remembering the days when she had been overlooked, and she approached each opportunity with gratitude and focus. Her relationship with the piano deepened, becoming not just a tool for performance, but a means of self-expression, reflection, and growth. Looking back, she realized that the journey had been as important as the achievements. The struggles, the doubts, the solitary practice, and the quiet determination had all contributed to the person she had become. She had learned to embrace her strengths, confront her fears, and express herself authentically. The applause, recognition, and astonishment of the audience were gratifying, but they were secondary to the satisfaction of knowing that she had given her best, shared her passion, and remained true to herself. Through all of this, she never lost sight of why she played the piano in the first place. It was not for fame or praise, but for the joy of creation, the beauty of sound, and the ability to communicate emotions that words could never capture. Each performance, each note, each chord was a reflection of her heart and soul, and as she continued to play, to practice, and to perform, she carried with her the quiet confidence and unwavering determination that had once been hidden in the corners of a music room, now shining brightly for all to see. Time passed, and she continued to grow not only as a musician but as a person. The experiences she had faced, the fear of being overlooked, and the triumphs she had earned shaped her in ways that went beyond the piano. She began to understand that talent alone was not enough. Courage, persistence, and dedication were just as vital. Each performance was an opportunity to share a piece of herself, and she approached them with both humility and confidence. She had learned that the world could astonish her as much as she could astonish the world. The next performance she attended was not at a school recital but at a community event, where a wider audience waited to hear a variety of talents. She felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but it was accompanied by a calm understanding. She had faced larger audiences, brighter lights, and more critical eyes. This time, she was ready to embrace every sound, every emotion, and every challenge. She set her music in order, warmed up slowly, and allowed her fingers to remember the hours of practice that had led her here. The stage was big, the seats full, and the anticipation in the air was palpable. When her turn came, she walked forward with a quiet grace, greeted the audience with a small nod, and sat at the grand piano. The lights were bright, yet she felt comfortable in their warmth. The first note sounded steady and clear, and she let herself be guided by the melody. Each note, each pause, each rise and fall of the music reflected her journey. The quiet hours, the struggles, the fear, and the triumphs. The audience leaned in, mesmerized by the delicate, expressive quality of her performance. This was no longer just a recital. It was a conversation with everyone present, a sharing of emotion and experience through sound. She remembered the times she had felt invisible, practicing in the shadows while others received attention. Those memories fueled her determination. She played with depth and precision, allowing her emotions to flow freely, unrestrained by doubt. Every crescendo carried a piece of her heart. Every diminuendo whispered the lessons she had learned. The audience responded in kind, their focus unwavering, their faces reflecting wonder and admiration. She realized that her music was capable of more than expression. It could connect people, create shared understanding, and even inspire those who listened. Halfway through her performance, she felt an overwhelming sense of presence. She was completely absorbed in the music, no longer aware of herself or the audience in the traditional sense. Her fingers moved instinctively, guided by years of practice, intuition, and emotion. The piano seemed to speak for her, conveying everything she had ever felt, every fear, every joy, every hidden dream. The audience became part of the music, their attention and energy enhancing the performance in ways she had never imagined. It was a perfect harmony of connection and expression. As she reached the final movements, the hall was silent, held in rapt attention. Each note lingered, resonating with emotion and intensity. She felt the culmination of all her experiences, the nervousness of past performances, the isolation of practice, the thrill of recognition, and the quiet confidence she had nurtured over the years. Her hands moved swiftly, yet with control, each chord ringing true, each phrase conveying the story she had carried inside for so long. She could feel the energy of the room responding to her, a wave of shared emotion and understanding. When the last note faded, the silence that followed was profound. Then, the hall erupted into applause, louder and more heartfelt than she had ever experienced. She rose from the piano, tears pricking her eyes, and bowed deeply. Faces in the audience showed astonishment, respect, and admiration. Some were moved to tears, others clapped with joy and excitement. In that moment, she understood that she had accomplished something extraordinary. Not just a flawless performance, but the sharing of her soul through music. She had astonished the entire room, not through showmanship or ego, but through authenticity and dedication. Backstage, performers and organizers approached her, offering congratulations, curiosity, and encouragement. She answered politely, her humility intact, yet inside she felt a deep sense of pride and fulfillment. Her parents hugged her tightly, their eyes shining with pride, and she felt the weight of years of practice, doubt, and perseverance lift from her shoulders. Recognition was not the goal, but it was a welcome acknowledgement of her journey and the effort she had invested. She realized that every moment of doubt, every hour of solitude, every fear she had faced had led her to this point of connection and impact. After the performance, she spent time reflecting on her growth. She thought about the quiet girl who had once been overlooked in the corner of a music room, uncertain and shy. That girl had persisted, had practiced tirelessly, had faced fear and self-doubt, and had nurtured a love for music that could not be ignored. Now, standing in the wake of applause and recognition, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for every moment that had brought her here. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be new challenges, but she was equipped to face them with courage and passion. In the days that followed, she continued to practice and perform, each time bringing something new to the music. She experimented with different styles, explored new compositions, and pushed herself beyond her comfort zone. Her understanding of music deepened, and so did her ability to communicate through it. She also continued to mentor others, quietly offering support and encouragement to those who were just beginning their journeys. She knew the importance of guidance and empathy, of helping others discover their own voices and overcome their own fears. Her personal growth extended beyond the piano. She became more confident in everyday life, more willing to express her opinions and share her thoughts. The lessons she had learned from music, patience, perseverance, attention to detail, and the courage to take risks, translated into other areas of her life. She realized that talent alone could not define her. It was the combination of skill, dedication, and heart that truly mattered. She faced challenges with a balanced mix of caution and boldness, learning from mistakes and celebrating successes along the way. She also began to understand the deeper purpose of her music. It was not only a personal expression or a means of recognition, but also a way to connect with others, to bring comfort, inspiration, and joy. Each performance became a dialogue, a shared experience, a way to reach hearts and minds that might otherwise never encounter her thoughts and feelings. She embraced this responsibility, striving to perform not just for herself but for the people who would listen, understand, and feel something meaningful. Over time, her story became an example for others. She was no longer the quiet, overlooked girl. She was a symbol of perseverance, of the rewards of dedication and courage, of the importance of staying true to oneself. Yet she remained humble, always remembering her beginnings, the hours of solitude, the struggles with fear and doubt. Those experiences had shaped her, and she honored them by continuing to grow, to challenge herself, and to share her music with authenticity and heart. As she looked back on her journey, she realized that every performance, every practice session, and every moment of doubt had been essential. The recognition she had received, while gratifying, was secondary to the personal growth, the discovery of her own voice, and the ability to communicate through music. She had transformed from the girl who was overlooked to a musician capable of moving hearts and inspiring others. The piano, once a silent companion, had become a bridge between herself and the world, a means of connection and expression that transcended language and expectation. In the end, she understood that the true measure of success was not applause, awards, or attention, but the courage to share oneself fully, to embrace vulnerability, and to pursue passion with dedication. She had astonished the entire room, yes, but more importantly, she had astonished herself by realizing her potential and claiming her place in the world. And as she continued to play, to practice, and to grow, she carried with her the lessons of her journey. The importance of perseverance, the power of authenticity, and the beauty of sharing one's true self with others. The quiet girl who had once been overlooked had found her voice, and it would resonate forever.